This is based on official documentation that surfaced less than 12 hours ago. And what these documents reveal about Meghan Markle has already triggered an emergency response from Buckingham Palace that nobody saw coming. Behind palace walls, whispers turned into panic the moment a confidential leak surfaced. King Charles and Prince William, bound by duty and legacy, were forced into a decision few believed they would ever make. A secret bank account, quietly buried for years, suddenly threatened the monarchy's fragile balance. Titles, once symbolic, became weapons. Lines were drawn. Doors slammed shut. And Meghan, she was blindsided as power shifted overnight. Nothing inside the palace would ever be the same. For the monarchy. Was this finally the breaking point? Let's dive into the shocking details. Secret account revealed. Buckingham Palace. Stunned. On the morning of January 1, 2026, a sealed envelope arrived quietly at Clarence House, addressed to the King's private secretary. Inside was a file that immediately set the palace on high alert. 47 pages of financial records, emails, and transaction logs stretching across 3 years. These were not ordinary documents. They were internal, confidential, and obtained through a discreet forensic audit that began in late 2024. The audit had been invisible to the public, unreported, and conducted under the strictest secrecy by a specialist firm in Geneva, renowned for tracking high-end net worth assets worldwide. What the files revealed left even seasoned palace aides stunned. Meghan Markle had maintained a private offshore account under a corporate name in the British Virgin Islands. Between 2019 and 2022, just over $4.22 million had flowed into that account. Pause for a moment. $4.2 million. The timing was striking. The account was opened 3 months before the announcement that Harry and Meghan would step back from royal duties. The deposits coincided almost exactly with the couple's public messaging about financial independence and being cut off from royal support. It gets more alarming. The documentation included email exchanges between Meghan and a Los Angeles-based financial advisor. Each email was time-stamped, laying out step-by-step instructions for structuring transfers to avoid reporting requirements in both the UK and the US. One email dated November 14, 2019 read, word for word, "We need to ensure this stays below the radar until we're completely clear of palace oversight." Another from February 20, 2020, just weeks before their final royal engagement, listed projected earnings from media contracts not yet public. The advisor referenced streaming platforms and production deals, figures that later matched almost exactly the deals announced with Netflix and Spotify. Consider the implications. These negotiations were happening while the Sussexes were still working royals, receiving taxpayer-funded security, and attending official functions on behalf of the Crown. The documents suggest a carefully plotted exit strategy with financial arrangements secured months before informing even the Queen. But the file revealed even deeper layers. Bank statements showed frequent transfers from the British Virgin Islands account to a second account in Delaware. Delaware is notorious for corporate secrecy, allowing ownership to be hidden behind layers of shell companies. This Delaware account financed operational costs for Archewell, the Sussex Foundation. At first glance, this may seem normal. Yet, Archewell was promoted as a charity funded through private donations and personal earnings. In reality, a substantial portion of its early operating capital came from an undisclosed account structured to avoid scrutiny and funded during a period when Meghan and Harry were still under royal financial protocols. Neither the palace nor the Charity Commission knew about these transactions. The money moved quietly, intentionally, and invisibly. The timeline adds another layer of clarity and concern. In January 2020, the Sussexes publicly announced their step back from royal duties, stressing a desire for financial independence. By March, they had completed final official engagements and relocated to North America. 3 months later, they purchased a $14 million estate in Montecito, California, putting down nearly $5 million. Reports at the time suggested a loan or private assistance. The documents tell a different story. In May 2020, roughly £3 million was transferred from the offshore account to a US-based escrow service, directly funding the property purchase. This was not a loan. It was money quietly accumulated months earlier, shielded from oversight, and now fully under their control. Every detail, every timestamp, every transfer paints a picture of meticulous planning and secrecy. The files show a side of the Sussexes' financial independence narrative that no public announcement ever revealed. A calculated and carefully concealed flow of funds that now sits at the center of a palace storm. And now, with the evidence laid bare, the palace faces an unavoidable decision, one that strikes at the heart of royal protocol and public trust. Stay glued to your screen as we uncover what happens next. Secret audit exposes Meghan royal title set to be stripped in late 2024. Buckingham Palace quietly noticed something was off. The exact spark remains unclear, but insiders point to what should have been a routine financial check of the royal estates. Something in the numbers didn't add up. Transactions appeared in accounts that had been closed or reassigned after the Sussexes stepped back from royal duties. At first, palace staff handled it internally, hoping it was just an accounting mistake. But early findings hinted at serious breaches of financial disclosure rules. When the potential severity became clear, the matter was escalated. A third-party audit was commissioned to leave no room for doubt. That investigation wrapped up in mid-December 2025, and the full report landed on the desks of King Charles and Prince William on January 1. Within hours, a unanimous decision was made. Meghan Markle's title, the Duchess of Sussex, would not merely be suspended or reviewed. It would be stripped permanently. Let's patent were already being prepared. Legal channels secured. The machinery of royal authority had started moving. The rarity of such a decision cannot be overstated. Taking a title is not like revoking a parking permit. It requires the monarch's direct approval, consultation with senior advisors, legal experts, and usually government input. The last comparable case was in 1936 when Edward VII abdicated. Stripping a title is reserved for acts that shake the very foundation of the monarchy. According to sources familiar with the audit, the evidence against Meghan was unmistakable. The audit revealed an undeclared offshore account. Transactions were structured to avoid reporting thresholds. Money was shifted quietly without disclosure. At the very least, this is a grave breach of the financial transparency the royal family is expected to uphold. At worst, it raises questions about potential legal violations across multiple countries. The implications are staggering. But the story doesn't stop at numbers. For years, Meghan and Harry have told the world they were victims of an institution that abandoned them financially and emotionally. Their narrative painted a picture of hardship, forced to fend for themselves, cut off from support, struggling to make ends meet. Oprah, Netflix, the memoirs, all emphasize their supposed vulnerability. And yet, the documents now show that during the exact period Meghan claimed financial hardship, millions were quietly transferred into hidden accounts. Multi-million-dollar estates were purchased, funded through channels no one knew existed. The public image of vulnerability collapses under the weight of the evidence. What's even more shocking is what the internal palace memos reveal. Staff who managed the Sussexes' finances and logistics took careful notes. One memo dated December 2019 describes an unusual request from Meghan's office for a complete breakdown of royal expenditures on security, travel, and accommodations. Information typically not shared at this level. Another memo from February 2020 notes that outside parties, specifically a California law firm representing Meghan, had requested internal financial records weeks before her official departure. Why? What were they searching for? Who allowed it to happen? The pattern that emerges is chilling in its clarity. This was not a spontaneous choice to step back from royal duties. It was a meticulously planned exit strategy, securing hidden finances, setting up offshore structures, negotiating lucrative media deals, and gathering internal information to fortify future legal or public campaigns. Every move was documented. Every step was carefully executed. Yet, none of it was shared with the family or the institution they publicly represented. This was not independence. This was a carefully orchestrated deception. Now, let's talk about King Charles and Prince William because their response tells you everything you need to know about how seriously they're taking this. Keep watching. Meghan's hidden finances ignite royal fury. For years, King Charles has been quietly reshaping the monarchy. His mission has been clear: modernize, streamline, and bring the institution closer to contemporary expectations. Slimmer operations, stricter financial oversight, and clear boundaries between personal wealth and institutional funds. These have been his guiding principles. But the recent revelations threaten to undo all of that. They suggest that a trusted member of the royal family may have deliberately operated outside those rules, exposing the crown to legal and reputational risk. Prince William has watched these events unfold with private frustration. Known for avoiding public confrontation, he has long maintained a careful distance from Harry and Meghan. Yet, insiders say he has been quietly exasperated by patterns of deception and manipulation. The new financial evidence appears to confirm his deepest concerns. He reportedly told his father that partial measures would be insufficient. The credibility of the monarchy, he argued, demanded swift and decisive action. Charles agreed. The move to strip Meghan of her title is not framed as punishment. It is a protective measure by allowing her to retain royal status, while the document suggests she violated the trust and transparency expected of the crown. The institution would risk far greater damage than by acting decisively. This is a line drawn in the sand. Membership in this family carries responsibilities, and privileges can be withdrawn when those responsibilities are broken. This principle applies to everyone, no matter the public story they craft or the media campaigns they run. Legally, Meghan could contest the decision. She might claim that her financial arrangements were legitimate, that the accounts were disclosed where required, or that her transactions were structured under professional advice and within the law. But the audit was conducted by an entirely independent firm with no stake in the outcome. The evidence is thorough, the timeline unambiguous, and the palace, for the first time in years, is willing to present facts rather than rely on anonymous sources or vague statements. Facts in this case are damning. Any legal challenge would force Meghan to testify under oath about where the funds originated, why they were hidden, and what her intentions were. She would have to provide documentation, answer probing questions, and face the intense scrutiny she had previously avoided. A risk any lawyer would caution against. Public perception is shifting as well. The Sussex brand has been carefully built on authenticity, truth-telling, and a narrative of standing up to a powerful institution. But truth and narrative collide when documents contradict the story. Negotiating deals in private while publicly pledging commitment to the crown erodes credibility. Standing up to an institution loses moral weight if financial gain was quietly prioritized. The contrast is stark, and the public is quick to notice it. When one side has concrete evidence and the other relies on carefully worded statements, evidence always dominates. As for Harry, he is not named as the central actor in the documents. The accounts were registered under Meghan's name. The correspondence routed through her team, and the instructions came from her. But he is not untouched. As her spouse, he shares in the public narrative of financial independence, the media projects, and the strategic decisions around stepping back from royal duties. He either knew of the account, making him complicit, or he did not, raising questions about his awareness and control. Neither scenario reflects well. The palace's decision to focus on Meghan's title signals a distinction. She is the principal actor. He is secondary. At its core, this is about behavior, not just a single account. It is about patterns of decisions prioritizing personal wealth over institutional duty. It is about trust and the consequences when trust is broken. Why hide money if everything is legitimate? Why structure transactions to avoid scrutiny if there is nothing to conceal? Why negotiate lucrative media deals while still representing the crown if intentions were above board? The questions are uncomfortable but unavoidable. The stakes are not just Meghan's reputation. They are the integrity of an institution that has endured for over a millennium by evolving, holding itself accountable, and refusing to tolerate actions that undermine its core values. The announcement will come. The palace is ready to act. The documents are clear. The timeline is damning. And the contradictions are impossible to ignore. These facts are indisputable. They exist independently of narrative, public relations strategies, or media sympathy. They reveal that during the very period Meghan claimed financial struggle, a hidden financial structure was quietly in motion. Not just while they held royal duties. Even after stepping back, Harry and Meghan have faced accusations of continuing to monetize the monarchy. Stay tuned as we reveal the full story behind this controversy. Harry and Meghan's controversial deals. The idea that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle monetized the monarchy has become one of the most persistent criticisms since their departure from royal duties. It is not about whether they were entitled to earn a living, but about when the groundwork was laid and what assets were used to secure those earnings. For critics, the controversy lies in the overlap between royal privilege and private profit, and whether the Sussexes crossed a line that previous generations carefully avoided. When Harry and Meghan stepped back in early 2020, The couple emphasized a desire for financial independence. Yet, within months, they announced lucrative agreements with Netflix, Spotify, publishers, and global speaking agencies. Commentators quickly pointed out that these deals were unlikely to have materialized without the visibility and credibility that came with being senior working royals. The question critics ask is simple but uncomfortable. Would these contracts have existed without the titles and global attention attached to them? Historically, members of the royal family have been restricted from commercial activity precisely to avoid this conflict. The monarchy's power has always rested on symbolism, continuity, and perceived neutrality. Royal status was not meant to be leveraged like a brand asset. Past royals who pursued commercial ventures often did so only after clear separation from royal roles and even then under scrutiny. In that context, the Sussexes' rapid pivot into entertainment and media deals felt unprecedented. Public backlash intensified when critics noted that the content of these projects often centered on royal life itself. Interviews, documentaries, and memoirs drew heavily on palace experiences, family relationships, and internal tensions. To supporters, this was simply Harry and Meghan telling their truth. To detractors, it looked like monetizing proximity to the crown while simultaneously denouncing it. That contradiction became the heart of the monetization debate. The International Business Times reported that royal commentators and constitutional experts warned this approach risked damaging the monarchy's reputation. The concern was not just about Harry and Meghan personally, but about precedent. If royal association could be converted into private profit without consequence, what would stop future royals from doing the same? The monarchy depends on restraint as much as relevance. And critics argue the Sussex model blurred that boundary beyond recognition. Within the UK public, opinion has remained divided. Polls over the years have shown declining approval ratings for the Sussexes, particularly among audiences who view the monarchy as a public service rather than a celebrity platform. For these critics, the Netflix specials and book deals reinforced the belief that royal status was being treated as intellectual property, something to be licensed and sold. Supporters counter that Harry and Meghan were pushed into commercial ventures after losing public funding and security. They argue the institution left them little choice. Critics respond that financial necessity does not erase ethical questions, especially when profits were tied so closely to royal identity. What makes this issue especially sensitive is timing. Many negotiations reportedly began while Harry and Meghan were still officially representing the crown. Even if no rules were broken, the perception of overlap continues to fuel distrust in the monarchy. Perception often matters as much as legality. For King Charles and Prince William, the monetization debate strikes at the core of what they are trying to protect. Charles has argued for a streamlined, credible monarchy that survives on public trust. William, increasingly seen as the guardian of that future, appears wary of anything that turns royal life into entertainment content. From their perspective, the Sussexes' business model risks reducing an ancient institution to a media franchise. This is why the criticism has never really gone away. It is not about contracts or dollar amounts alone. It is about whether royal identity can be selectively embraced for profit while rejected in principle. And as scrutiny grows, the conversation is shifting again from money to something even more sensitive. For now, the debate over Harry and Meghan's royal titles continues to rage on. What began as a technical agreement in 2020 has evolved into a much deeper controversy about symbolism, boundaries, and whether royal status can ever be separated from public life. Although they retained their Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles, they agreed not to use the HR style, creating a gray area that has fueled ongoing criticism. Royal titles carry historical weight, and when they appear in commercial or semi-commercial contexts, questions inevitably arise. Reports claiming Meghan used her HR title privately reignited concerns about violating the spirit of the agreement, even if no law was broken. Critics argue that continuing to benefit from royal prestige while criticizing the institution feels like selective engagement, especially when titles enhance credibility in media, branding, and business ventures. Public sentiment has steadily shifted, with polls showing declining approval in the UK, where the monarchy is viewed as a public service rather than a celebrity platform. Media scrutiny, social media amplification, and repeated controversies have intensified backlash, shaping a feedback loop of criticism that affects not only personal reputations but the monarchy itself. Ultimately, the Sussex brand has become inseparable from public opinion, leaving every action open to interpretation. The central question remains unresolved. Is this a betrayal of trust or simply a complex financial strategy?